Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm so excited to have Julie Ryan here. Julie Ryan is an inventor, an entrepreneur, a medical intuitive who has written a wonderful book called Angelic Attendants: What Really Happens as We Transition from This Life into the Next, and Angel Messages for Kids. And after reading this, the more and more I read it, I became more and more excited. I think everybody's going to love this discussion. Julie in the book documents her own experiences seeing through the veil to the other side, especially people that are dying, and documents witnessing angels and family members and seeing a pattern that exists for people that are dying. And beyond that, she's a medical intuitive. And so there's so much that we can talk about. And I was so excited that she agreed to come on the show. So welcome to the Reality Revolution, Julie. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, I'm so honored to be on. What a treat to be with you.
Well, I'm honored to have you. And when I was reading this book, I was very much reminded of my grandfather and some cousins in my family. I've been with people that do see spirits, that have been in situations where family members are dying, and they see that mother and father and the pets and other show up. So when I was reading that, it wasn't just something new. It was, oh, what she is seeing is I've seen before. And so for a lot of people, death can be a fearful thing. And so what you're doing is kind of unveiling the process of it, but there's some implications behind it that make you think, oh, what else is going on? So I wanted to talk about that. So tell us a little bit more for people that maybe haven't heard about you, about your story, and what your abilities are, and how you came to this point.
Thanks, Brian. I am a businesswoman that learned how to do woo-woo. Is what I tell people.
Right.
I'm an inventor of surgical devices sold throughout the world, and I'm an entrepreneur. I am a serial entrepreneur. I have founded 9 companies in 5 industries in
Wow.
a little over 30 years. And how I came to this was, I laugh. I tell people I'm not one of those psychics who's had dead people chasing her since childhood, or if I did, I didn't know it,
Right.
let alone what I would have done with that information had I known it. And I had a friend give me a book called Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Mace,
Uh-huh.
probably, gosh, 27, 28 years ago. And I read it, and she called herself a medical intuitive. And I had been in the hospital supply industry my whole career. And I thought, what the heck's a medical intuitive? I'd never heard that term before. And so I read her book, and I was interested, and I wanted to learn more. But back then, Brian, we didn't have the internet, and we certainly didn't have Amazon yet.
Right.
So I did the old fashioned thing, and I went to a bookstore to
Right.
see what else I could find. I still love going to bookstores.
Well, me too.
The bookstore may have more woo-woo stuff in it than a library.
Right.
So I went to the bookstore, and I found this book called Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. And
Hmm.
Barbara Brennan is a former NASA physicist who took very complex quantum physics principles and distilled them down to understandable language for the non-scientific mind. That would be me. I'm a
Hmm.
businesswoman. I don't have a scientific mind.
Right.
And I read her book and was interested to learn more. So I called her school and asked if there was anybody in my area that was teaching. And sure enough, there was. And so I studied with one of her graduates for 6 years
Wow.
and learned how to do this medical, intuitive, and psychic stuff. And now I teach it, Brian. I have a class,
Hmm.
and I started it about a year ago. And close to 75 people have been through it from 6 countries. You got to speak English because that's the only language I speak.
Right.
Typical American, right? I only speak one language. And I teach people how to do what I do. And so I say I'm a businesswoman that learned how to do woo woo, and I'm a buffet of psychicness. So
Okay.
I can scan you medically. I can scan your pet. We can talk to your dead grandma. We can do past life stuff. We can do spirit guide stuff, angel stuff. I mean,
Wow.
it's just endless. Once what I teach is once somebody is able to communicate with spirit, you can take it anywhere you want because you have access to universal
Right.
intelligence.
One of the things I loved about the book, and I could see your understanding, you could see a guardian angel, for instance, and it was this tall with blonde hair, and you acknowledged that's my filter, that you are, when you see that angel, you're seeing it the way that you were kind of raised and taught to see an angel, but that there's a filter that you have when you see these things. It's like your mind is kind of creating an image for you to understand. It may not be exactly that, but using your intuitiveness, you're seeing an image, and it's not maybe that's exactly what they look like. It's what your mind is projecting for you to understand this image. Is that am I describing that correctly?
Yeah, great way to do it. I went through 12 years of Catholic schools, so
Right.
I picture
So
an angel with big wings and a white gown and all of
right.
that. And
So when you hear
certainly,
somebody, they go, "Oh, that's not what an angel looks like. She's not. She's false." That's not how it works. Because your mind, everybody's going to see an angel differently, right? Pretty
well,
much.
somebody, for instance, somebody that grew up in a indigenous tribe in the Amazon
Right.
is going to see an angel maybe as a purple ball of energy. Somebody else may see it looking like a lotus
Right.
flower. I mean, it's just energy. It's, to your point, it's how we interpret through our imagination
Right.
based on our frame of reference that we're going to understand. When I see spirit guides around
Hmm.
someone, spirit guides always show up. You love this. The spirit guides always show up as some version of Father Time. Look like Dumbledore from Harry Potter or
Right.
Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings, old man, long hair, white beard, whatever.
Right.
And then when we communicate with them, then they morph into what they looked like in the lifetime that they live that correlates with what they're advising the person on.
Okay.
So I think it was yesterday, I had a client who wanted to talk to her spirit guide, it was a spirit guide, and I forget his name. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it was a Viking.
Yeah.
Her spirit guide showed up as a Viking with the hat and the
That's kind of
horns and
cool.
the whole nine yards. Yeah, it was really fun.
Help me understand the difference between a higher self and a spirit guide. Do you ever see the higher self come through, an aspect of that person, or is it just their soul, or the spirit? All the spirits that you're seeing are outside of that person, right? They're
Yes,
separate individual entities.
the higher self and the spirit in my mind are the same thing,
Okay.
because we're all spirits attached to a body having a human experience.
Okay.
So when we're attached to a body, Brian, we vibrate more slowly simply because the body has mass. I talk
Right.
in analogies a lot to give our human minds a frame of reference for this woo-woo stuff that
Right.
I see and experience. And so when I talk about the body having mass, it would be the equivalent of trying to run an electrical current through a bowl of pudding. It's going to slow it down, right?
Right.
Because there's
Right.
mass for it to get through. And so when I'm seeing spirit guides or I'm seeing angels, that's pure energy in non-physical form.
Right.
So we're all spirits attached to a body. So we have a non-physical aspect of us. That would be our higher selves, as some people describe it. And the thing that's cool about it, Brian, unlike again what I was taught in Catholic schools, that the spirit or the soul is someplace in the chest, upper chest area,
Hmm.
what I perceive is that the spirit is the main part of us and the body is inside the spirit. The
Right.
spirit is the power source for the body. And that would correlate with, if you think about, if you ever have seen a picture of a religious figure, oftentimes they're depicted with a halo around their head or around their whole body.
Right.
Well, guess what? That's their energy field. That's their spirit. That's their aura. It's all the same thing.
So the body is just a part of
Correct.
some bigger thing, and we're
Correct.
only just experiencing a small expression of this bigger thing.
Correct. And
Okay.
it's all holographic.
It's all
And then
holographic.
it's contained in what I call the energy field membrane. And
Okay.
that reminds me of really thin, stretchy saran wrap, the kind like you'd get wrapped on a tray of
Right.
chicken breasts from the grocery store.
Hmm.
And so it's all holographic. Here's an analogy for you. If you go to the pet store and buy a goldfish, they're going to put it in a plastic bag of
Right.
water in order for you to get it home. So if you have a picture of that in your mind's eye, the body is represented by the goldfish, the water represents our spirit, because again, the body's inside the spirit. And then the plastic bag represents the energy field
And
membrane.
that's outside of us too. How about how far would, on average, would that you see?
It's like that stretchy saran wrap that comes on a tray of chicken breast. It expands based on how big our energy field is.
Right.
And everybody's energy field is different. You know, when you walk in a room and somebody who's very charismatic, it's like their energy field that goes
Right.
out, and encompasses the whole room.
So when
So it
somebody's energy
expands.
field interacts with yours,
Mhm.
the saran wrap, does it mix, or what do you see when you see two energy fields that are coordinating like that?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that question before. What do I see? I see that the energy field molds, it
Hmm.
melds, it goes together. But when I'm connecting with someone, for instance, I scan people all over the world.
Right.
So I close my eyes, I raise my vibrational level to the level of spirit. That's how I'm able to connect with their spirit. And
Hmm.
I watch in my mind's eye a laser beam come from my body. I live in Birmingham, Alabama. So
Right.
I watch it come from Sweet Home, Alabama, and it travels like to you. It's going to travel out in Orange County in
Right.
California. And then I see a hologram of you in my mind's eye. And
Hmm.
I shoot energy from your feet up through the top of your head. And it's as if I'm looking at an X ray or CT scan or an MRI, if I'm doing a medical scan.
Right.
And so that laser beam is called a bioplasmic streamer. So that's how I'm able to see in my mind's eye the
Hmm.
equivalent of like a CT scan.
Right.
But when we're just talking with a spirit, whether it's connected to a body or not, we tune to their frequency by just a thought of them. Our heads are
Right.
like big satellite dishes, Brian. They receive and transmit
Right.
frequencies, like radio stations are
Hmm.
broadcasting, like 94.7 The Wave, the smooth jazz channel in Southern California is
That's right.
broadcasting on 94.7, right? That
Right.
was my
Right.
favorite station when I lived there. And how we tune our satellite dishes to a specific person, whether I want to scan you and you're
Hmm.
a spirit connected to a body, or I want to talk to Napoleon or Ben Franklin or
Right.
my deceased grandmother, I think of that person that automatically tunes our satellite dish head to that spirit's frequency. And a spirit keeps the same frequency through all lifetimes. So we can go past lives with them, we can go,
Right.
present, we can go future. It's really fascinating.
Now, as somebody that can see, I want to ask: do you? Many practitioners have talked about a silver cord that's in the back of the head for astral travel, or an energy cord that comes behind us, kind of. Do you see something like that?
No,
I'm seeing more. You don't see any sort of specific assemblage or energy point behind. Okay, all right,
no, it looks like, on the Star Trek movies, Beam Me Up, Scotty, when
right,
they're being beamed up to another planet,
right,
they look like a hologram of whoever, Spock or
right,
Captain Kirk or whoever. That's what spirits look like to me. They look
right.
like a hologram of what they looked like in the life that they lived.
So
That
the
correlates
interesting,
with what we're talking about.
right. Sorry about. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no.
Um, so the interesting thing about the book is you talk about a pattern that you've noticed when you're with people that are dying. The the uh, the mother is on the left foot, right? I think I got that right.
Correct.
And the
Yes.
father's on the right foot. You even see the pets. They're all in the same place.
Right.
So my question, first of all, what happens when people didn't get along with their father? Do they still show up? Like what? Like you have somebody, a client. I don't want my mother to show up right now, right? Or does that happen? I mean, do they still show up?
They do, because all spirits are pure love.
Pure love,
And
right?
all the snarkiness of a personality stays with the body when the
Right,
body dies. When somebody dies, their spirit and their body separate. The energy that makes up their spirit and their energy that makes up their spirit,
right,
their spirit energy, their everlasting part, it separates. And so all spirits are pure love, which is a paradigm shift for we humans, simply
right,
because we're taught that people are good and bad. You say
right,
say to somebody in our culture, well, somebody who's really awful, a lot of people think of a Hitler type
right.
person, and people say, well,
Hitler's mom and dad probably showed up too,
oh, absolutely. Well,
right? Yeah,
Hitler, uh, his spirit is pure love.
right,
So people say, well, I hope he's burning in hell for eternity. Yeah, his spirit is pure
right,
love. His personality stayed, all that awfulness,
right,
all those horrible personality traits that he had stayed with his body when he died. And
right.
that's
It's
still up for grabs how he died.
it's
We
right.
have
It's
Hitler
what's also
hunters. The Nazi
Uh,
hunters shows.
it's hard for people to grasp that, and for some people, it's frustrating and even makes them angry because they think that he deserves this punishment.
Right.
But I've read and sensed that too. That so so and the cool thing is even my pets. That's very exciting. Now the question: do you think that these are the actual beings or representative of them? What if my dad's moved on and he's living another life or has some? He's still going to show some aspect of him. He's multidimensional in that way, is what you're saying. Is that even if he's out living a life on Earth again, reincarnated, his higher being will still show up on my right foot, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
And in the Bible, it says we're made in the image and likeness of God.
Right.
And most people think that that means that God looks like a human. How I perceive that, Brian, is that we're made in the image and likeness of God in spirit
In
form.
spirit form,
So
yes.
if God can be everywhere all at the same time, we have the capability of being many, many places, if not
Okay.
everywhere all at the same time too. And it's interesting because, again, that's a paradigm shift. It's hard for
Right.
us to wrap our human minds around that. But I'm reminded of the TV show Bewitched when I was a
Right.
kid. It was one of
Hmm.
my favorite shows, and I
Definitely.
remember thinking, "Oh, I just want to be like Samantha Stevens when I grow up, and I want to yell mother, and Dora will come right in." Well, that's what happens with spirit. You
Hmm.
think of them and they're right there. Or Samantha Stevens would want to be in a different place. She would want to go to her husband Darren's office, and she would snap
Right.
her fingers and she'd be there. And that's what I can do and what I teach my students to do. It's called remote viewing.
Right.
And I do that all the time when somebody's having surgery. I can be remotely viewing the surgery in an operating room
Amazing.
anywhere in the world, real time. I can tell you how many doctors are in the room. I could tell you where they are in the procedure. I can tell you,
Wow.
you know, I can read the anesthesia equipment if I need to, and that kind of thing. So it's really fascinating
It
how
is.
you hear that we use such a teeny percentage of our brains, and I agree.
Right. So tell me about the first time where you actually talked to an angel, and you had a communication with an angel. How did that? You've had conversations or communication with angels, correct?
I talk to spirits more than angels.
Okay, angels are not very talkative, is what you're saying?
I don't. Yeah, I don't know. Angels to me are there, uh, and they bring grace. What does
Hmm.
that sound Catholic, right? 12 years
Right.
of Catholic schools coming out here. They bring grace. They can be messengers, certainly throughout all of religious texts. There's angels bringing messages. The angel, appeared to Moses. The angel appeared to,
Right.
certainly in the Bible, all over the Quran, all over a lot of the Torah, all of that.
Hmm.
But I really communicate with spirit more than angels per se. There are a lot of people that really focus on angels. I, it's not for any reason. It's just that I communicate with spirit way more often
The
than
spirit
angels.
of a particular
Someone
spirit.
who's deceased.
Okay. All right.
Well, I have a spirit guide who's a dead pope
Oh
named Pope
wow.
Clement the 6th. And he showed up one day in his whole Pope outfit. He always shows up in his whole Pope outfit, right? It's
Right.
hilarious. And
Have you
and
asked him
I,
why? I mean,
I
is it?
tease him. Yeah, I say, "Hey, Clement, I know who you are. You don't have to wear your whole Pope hat and everything." He
Right.
takes it off when he sits down to talk to me.
Oh wow.
And and so he showed up one day about 10 years ago. And I could tell he was Pope by the way he was dressed. I could tell he was an ancient Pope. And I said,
Hmm.
"Well, who are you?" And he said, "I'm Clement." And I said, "There was a Pope Clement?" He said, "Yeah, I was number 6." And he was kind of chuckling. And I said, "Well, may I help you?" And
Yeah.
he went on to say, "Yeah, you need to write a book about what happens when people are dying because everybody's so afraid to die, and it's been
Right.
bastardized, from civilizations and religions and stuff. And you just need to do it." Because I had already seen this 12 phases of transition, I call it, how we're
Hmm.
surrounded by angels and deceased loved ones. I'd seen it with my own mother and lots of
Hmm.
other people at that point. And so I said to Pope Clement's spirit, I said, "I'm not doing that." I said, "I'm a businesswoman. Are you kidding? People
Right.
are going to think I'm nuts." and he laughed and he said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, whatever. All your experience up to this point has led you to get here, and this is what you're supposed to do. So just do it." He's like a Nike
Right.
ad with me. He tells me, "Just do it." So I said, "Yeah, yeah, whatever." I go out to my car, Brian, a little bit later,
Hmm.
and I Googled him just for kicks to
Of
see who's
course. Right.
Pope Clement the Sixth. He was in office during the Black Plague, and
Oh,
he's best
wow.
known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead, because back then, two-thirds of Europe died
Right.
during the Black Plague. And so it's interesting that he's my spirit guide, and here we
Very.
are in the middle of a pandemic.
So
Um,
another
yeah.
interesting thing that I've always thought that I love to get confirmation of in your book was that sometimes we're in halfway in and halfway out, and that we also choose when we die. It's our choice. For my father, he had dementia, and many times I felt like he was halfway. His foot was in the other side while he was here, and it was a slow process for him. Does that Have you seen that before, where people are kind of halfway in and halfway out?
Yes, very much. What I've come up with in angelic attendance is what I call the 12 phases of transition.
Right.
And it's a configuration, you alluded to it earlier, Brian, and
Right.
it's a configuration of how the angels and the deceased loved ones are positioned as the person is approaching death. And everyone goes through, in my how I perceive it, everyone goes through the 12 phases of transition. It can be instantly, like in the case of a suicide or a homicide,
Right.
or you hear it was an accident,
An
car
accident.
accident, and
They
they
still
died
show up. They
instantly.
know.
Right. Or it can be like your dad, over days, weeks, months, sometimes years.
Uh-huh.
And what I find is that time doesn't exist in the spirit world. Time is a human invention.
Okay.
And so if you think of, okay, well, somebody died instantly versus somebody took 2 years to die, there's no concept for that in the spirit world.
Right.
And we all choose when we go, where we go, who's with us when we go, what the circumstances are. And you can talk to any funeral director anywhere in the world,
Hmm.
and they'll have many stories about the family sat with grandma for 3 weeks, and Aunt Susie was on duty and she got up to get a cup of coffee, and grandma died while Susie was out of the room. We've heard many stories like
Right. So
that.
that was my question. With me, my
Yeah.
mom waited for us to leave.
Mhm.
She
Yeah.
and I hear that a lot. That a lot of times that uh, everybody's waiting, sitting by the bed, waiting, waiting. Everybody, okay, let's go get something to eat, and we'll be right back. And that's when it happens. Almost like
Right.
they're embarrassed. They're waiting for us to leave, or choosing that particular time. They don't want a bunch of people in the room when it happens. And so,
And it's hard for the family when that happens because they start feeling guilty about it.
right,
And the thing to remember is that that person always chooses how they go, when they go,
always.
where they go. Yes, and I've
Okay.
had that happen with my family too. My
Hmm.
my maternal grandmother, for whom I'm named and was very, very close to,
Hmm.
I fed her a full dinner. She was in the hospital. She was six
Right.
weeks shy of 100, and I said, "I'll see you tomorrow." And I was gone maybe half an hour. She checked out after I left, and I thought,
Right.
"What the heck?" Yeah. So they
Somebody
all
needs to do a
choose.
study, because what we're saying is true. I know it. I've seen it. I want
Yeah.
to do a study. Like how would you do it? I guess but
Well, you need somebody who's a psychic or a medium to be able to talk to the spirit of the person why
right.
they left. When my mother was dying, I was the only one with her, and the family was on their way. It was 5 in the morning, and I
Hmm.
decided to spend the night with her. And she was in a hospice facility, and the nurses kept saying it's going to be a couple of weeks before she dies, because she was transferred in from the hospital and been on
Right.
IVs and stuff. She was well hydrated, and it was not that was not correlating with what I was seeing in the spirit world. So I decided to stay. And her death was not pretty. She was not, now I know she probably wasn't well medicated enough.
Right.
She didn't have enough medication but she really struggled. And she knew I could handle it, and she knew I could see what was going on from the spirit world. But I think it would have been really awful for my family to have seen that.
Right.
And I hear that from other family members who have a loved one who struggled as they were dying, and it was just not, it wasn't peaceful. And a
Hmm.
lot of the times, what the hospice staff will tell you now is that they just weren't medicated.
Hmm.
well enough to. So sometimes that happens, but they all know. They all know what
Yeah.
what's going to be the best situation, not only for them but also for other loved ones as well.
There's a lot of fear out there, like you've said,
There
and what
is.
you've done is really helps with that. So let's break up some weird beliefs. People, uh, are there? Have you seen negative entities show up? Should we be
Never.
afraid of some
No.
demons or negative entities? Have
No.
you
Never. No.
have you ever seen or sensed a negative entity?
No, I don't believe they
I
exist.
don't
I
believe they
believe
exist, right?
I believe that they have been concocted by religions and civilizations to control the masses. And I
Hmm.
believe that our publishing industry and our entertainment industry and our movie industry throughout history has sold lots of tickets and lots of books and lots of
Right.
movies on that. But no, they don't exist.
Right. And so, yeah, you get people that are afraid that I have this eternal hell because I lived here for a second, that that my God will punish me eternally in the fires of hell for trillions of years. And so there's that fear. That's the starting point, right? So,
Right.
um, and so thank you for at least pointing that out. So we're, as at the time of this interview that people may be watching a recording of this, we're going through the coronavirus. And so it's you're a medical intuitive, meaning that you can sometimes there's things that we just can't figure out through MRIs and tests, and having that extra remote ability can nail down diseases and problems. First of all, on a global scale, what is your sense of what's going on with this pandemic? Have you had any chances to to remotely view anybody that's suffering from this, or possibly? And what is your perspective of it with your knowledge and abilities?
Well, several things. First of all, it looks like a virus to me. Viruses look like, in somebody's energy field, they look like really watery beef broth. How's that for
Okay.
an analogy for you?
All
I've
right.
told you I talk in analogies a lot to give
Right.
our human mind,
That's the way
human
you're
minds.
perceiving it, filtering
That's
it,
right.
right?
If it's a bacterial infection, I see hot pink energy, almost a fuchsia with more
Uh-huh.
pink than purple in it. This is definitely viral.
Mhm.
I believe that it's going to be a blip on the radar screen, even though it feels very dramatic and very scary right
Mhm.
now. The number of deaths, you compare it to the Black Plague. My God, it took Europe 300 years to get the population back to pre plague numbers
Right.
because 2/3 of Europe died. And so I think our technologies and our medical advances in this time with
Mhm.
this, and this is a plague, this would be considered a plague or a
Mhm.
pandemic, same thing. I think it's going to be minuscule compared to other ones that we've had. I believe that there are so many amazing benefits that are coming as a result of this
Mhm.
that it's hard to measure all of them. We certainly can see things that our government is doing on the federal, state, and local levels that are just miraculous. I mean, building a 2,500 bed hospital in the middle of Central Park in 4 days, that's
Right.
just incredible. The I was regulated by the FDA for years. I manufactured surgical devices.
Right.
So I know what it's like to deal with those regulators and to get
It's
something
hard.
approved in 4 days, 14 days, some new test or something is just miraculous.
It is,
And
yeah.
and so I think we're working together on a global scale for
Mhm.
humankind, which is amazing. Who knows how this virus is going to enhance our immune systems? And I think it does. I think
And
anybody that's had it, and the experts are saying now that many, many, many of us have been exposed. Many of us perhaps have the virus in our system, and we have absolutely no symptoms, but
right.
I believe that it's enhancing our immune system. I think it's all unfolding perfectly. And not to take away any of the pain and suffering of families who've lost a loved one. Certainly they're grieving. Certainly we send them our love and our prayers. And at the same time, the majority of those people that have chosen to die from this have other comorbidity issues that they would have died from, and they chose to go out with this.
Right. They're
So,
choosing to die, based on
exactly.
They're all choosing that moment.
That's right.
It's okay.
Yeah. So I wrote a blog about this a couple weeks ago, Brian, because I
Uh-huh.
had a client that said to me, "Well, Pope Clement, your spirit guide, was in, he was Pope
R
during the Black Plague. What's he have to say about this?"
right.
And one of the lines, and there's a whole thing at askjulieryan.com on my blog. You can read it.
Okay.
And and one of the things he said was, "Fear is a powerful motivator, and love reigns supreme."
Right.
I thought, well, okay. And he talked about how with our technology that we're able to really do things to help mankind. At the same time, we're doing things to benefit our own civilizations, was the word he used. So I take that as, America's doing stuff to benefit Americans. Canada's doing stuff to benefit Canadians. The
Right.
UK's, same, each individual country, but we're all working together. Our American manufacturers are manufacturing enough ventilators that we're going to be able to send them around the globe to other
Mhm.
companies that need them. And I think there's just so much of this amazing stuff. I find that when I go in the store, people smile at each other, they say
Yes.
hello, they're patient, they wait in the lines, they do what they need to do. I always thank everybody for working. My
Mhm.
husband and I sent 100 meals down to University Hospital, our local University
Oh, wow.
Hospital's ER, just as a thank you to the
Yeah,
staff.
that is
And it's,
wonderful.
just as they don't know who we are, but I called down there. I said, "Can we send meals?" And they said, "Yeah, as long as they're individually packaged." I said, "Great."
Yeah. That's a
So
great idea. You got me
I think,
inspired, so yeah.
yeah, I think there are lots of things that we can do. And I think people are stepping up to the plate and stepping up to
Yeah.
the challenge of helping others.
I mean, even though we're social distancing, I feel more connected to everybody. An unusual contradiction, but more concern, more connection. There's a group consciousness forming from this.
Mhm.
You can see it, and it's exciting. And then sometimes it's good for people just to sit at home and go within. And so
Well,
I
and
s-
I think so many people have said, well, I just wish I had more time with my kids. I just wish I didn't have to drive into
exactly
work every day. Well, you're getting all your wishes.
right.
I just wish I had time to make this new recipe. I just wish I had time to read this book. Okay.
Hmm.
Wish granted all over
Right.
the world.
That's amazing. Tell me the craziest thing that you've seen. Something that was a little unexpected. Being able to see to the other side. I'm sure that there's some things that came a little bit unexpected, and I'd love to hear those kind of stories.
Two come to mind. I see lots of healings when I'm doing a medical scan on somebody. Something's identified, and then there's always an energetic healing that
Hmm.
begins immediately, and that can take the form of something getting added, something getting removed. I watch energetic healings all the time, Brian, that emulate what I saw in operating rooms and other departments at the hospital for all those years I was in that business. Sometimes I see healings that utilize methodologies and devices that haven't been invented yet. And I have seen whole organs get generated with stem cell energy, and they show up on
Wow.
subsequent scans. I have seen,
So
there's a
have you
one.
seen devices? I keep going here. Have you seen devices that you also use to, because I know you have patents on new medical devices. Has that helped you shape and craft new medical devices from what you've seen?
I didn't do woo woo yet
You
when
didn't
I
do
was
woo?
inventing all that stuff. I was
Okay,
just
so
starting.
keep going. So keep,
My first invention is a device that collects the patient's blood during total joint surgery. It
okay.
puts their own blood back into them so they don't have to use bank blood or
Well, okay.
pre-deposit blood. And I didn't even know about woo woo yet when I invented that. So was I
Right.
tuned into something? Obviously. Did I
Probably,
know it?
yeah.
No, no, I
Yeah.
didn't. But one client in particular is a woman in Manhattan, and her daughter was born missing two-thirds of her brain. And the doctor said she'll probably only live a couple of days. Well, you know what? She's almost a year old, and we've been doing healings on her ever since.
Oh,
And her
wow.
brain has not only regenerated. The part of her brain that was missing was just full of water,
Uh-huh.
full of fluid. And then as her brain's been it's been generating, not even regenerating. I've been using stem cell energy to generate new brain matter. I got a text from her yesterday, and that baby is starting to see.
Oh, wow. That's
It's
amazing.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another fun story, one that I like to tell a lot, is I work with a client who is a CEO of a publicly traded, very large company who
Mm.
has metastasized prostate cancer.
Right.
And in one of his healings, we got that he was a British admiral in a past life during the late 1700s, and he was the commander of the Atlantic Fleet. And he was best known for some big naval battle with the French. And we got the year and we got what his name was and all this other stuff. And we correlated that he obviously was very good at leading in that lifetime and he is in this lifetime, but he's not so good at receiving. And in this lifetime,
Ah.
he's exploring being a leader, different set of circumstances, still leading
Hmm.
thousands of people in his company and certainly investors and, the analysts and all those
Right.
guys, all those Wall Street guys. But he is being brought to his knees with this cancer because he's having to learn to
Hmm.
receive from his wife, receive from his caregivers, receive from his doctors. And he doesn't like it. He wants to run the show and he wants to lead, but he doesn't want to have anybody, do things for him. So it's really fascinating the things that come up and then correlate it with current day events. And we see
Yeah.
lots of similarities, lots of correlations.
What's interesting
It's
is you
fun.
have these stories and you can go look up in the history book.
Oh
You can
yeah.
go and get the information corresponds.
Right. Today
Wow.
I had a client I just finished with her an hour ago. She was from the UK and I got that she had been in World War I at a city on the west coast of England. It was like Bournemouth or something like
Hmm.
that. And we got the year that she was there and we Googled it while I was on the phone with her. Well, there's this battle that was fought in this place,
Hmm.
during World War I in this town that was a coastal town. I saw this picture of her in the trenches. She had the helmet on.
Hmm.
It was just, yeah, wild.
Wow.
It's really fun to
Have
be
you?
able to get that information
Yeah.
and then be able to validate it with historic documents online.
Now, through your process, have you encountered anybody with past lives not of this earth or of some plane that's not identifiable? So, tell me about that.
Great question. One of my favorite, and it's episode 31 of my podcast. I
Okay,
remember this
I,
because this
I'm.
is
I
one of
will
my
definitely check it out.
all-time favorite questions. A guy called in and he said, "Can you check and see if I was an engineer in a past life?" And I said, "Yeah." So I do this past life scan and I get this. It looked like the set of Star Wars. I mean, the tall buildings and the arid climate and the spaceships flying around like the
Right.
Jetsons looking spaceships and stuff. I was thinking, oh my God, this is a future life. And then I got it was, I think, 1931 or something. I'm thinking, oh, it's a past life on a different planet. And I got that he was a man in that life. And oftentimes when I'm in a life on a different planet, I'm scanning it for someone or talking to an angel and sometimes even spirit guides. I'll get some name that is a language that is not known to the human race.
Right.
I mean, certainly not known to me.
Uh-huh.
And that was one of those cases where I got this name of whatever his name was. It was in, whatever the planet was. But the thing that was so wild, Brian, was I got that he was head of the whole electrical grid. And I said, "You're in charge of all the electrical grid, which powers, all the buildings, all the homes, all the vehicles, everything." And I said to him on the show, I said, "What kind of engineer are you?" And he said, "I'm an electrical
Oh,
engineer."
wow.
I thought, I always say, I can make
Yeah.
this stuff up. I'm not that creative. But
Well,
yeah,
it's
those are really fun.
well, it's exciting too. It's not just this planet; it's the whole universe, uh,
And many universes. I
and
mean, there
many
were
different
billions
universes.
of universes. Yeah.
So Dolores Cannon was this hypnotist that's very popular on my channel, and she would do this. She would explore past lives, and she started noticing a trend of a lot of different spirits in their past lives talking about something big happening, like the Earth is changing, something unique and special, which has been mirrored by other channeled entities, people talking to spirits. And it's hard, we're getting this information to cut from the wheat from the chaff and know what's right and wrong. And but what hers was interesting was she was seeing a pattern. not just one of her clients, multiple. Have you had any inklings of what she's talking about? This expression and idea, this vague idea of something's happening on the planet, so we're moving towards or evolving to something more. Have you sensed that?
Mm, Not necessarily per
Okay.
se, but certainly we're always evolving and we're always expanding.
Right.
And for instance, babies come in and they know more. I have
Right.
my friends now have grandchildren, and I have grandchildren through marriage. And these babies come in and they can't talk yet, but they know how to use an iPad. I mean, I barely know how to use an iPad. So
Right.
they
Right.
come in, it's like they're more technologically advanced. They're more advanced in a lot of ways. And
Mhm.
as we expand, then those spirits, and as we choose when we die and how we die and who's with us and all that, we
Mhm.
choose when we're born, where we're born, to whom we're born. So we have a basic trajectory, our lives of whatever it is we're going to explore. And I have a friend who, Brandon Beecham is his name, and he
Mhm.
coined this phrase: the life is the crossroads of destiny and free will. So destiny would be a real general thing that we want to explore, like you want to explore betrayal. And then there are a bazillion ways you can explore betrayal
Right.
in each life. I mean, my gosh, countless.
Right.
So, as far as something, is the planet expanding? Absolutely. I think every time that we have a crisis, certainly on a global scale,
Mhm.
which in my lifetime, I haven't experienced this
Right.
before. I'm a lot older than you are, and I haven't experienced it. So I know you haven't either.
No.
And so I think that we're expanding in just countless ways, and it's everything that happens benefits us because there's no right or wrong in the spirit world.
Right.
It's just an experience.
It's just an
and
experience.
and to those of us that are in human form, we go, what? How can
Right.
that be? We see things as good or bad, right or wrong. And so I think if we can get to the point where we say, okay, everything's benefiting us in
Mhm.
some way, and obviously we maybe can't figure it out at the moment, we're in the middle of some tragedy that we're going
Right.
through. But when we look back on situations like that, most of the time we can say, well, I'm kind of glad that happened because this and this happened and it was really
Right.
good.
So, a lot of great spiritual teachers like Buddha and Hinduism will teach the idea that we're stuck in this wheel of karma. That all these past lives, it's not a good thing. We're just stuck going through every. Why have kids? You're just going to get stuck here in another life because you're going to end up doing something wrong, and it's a constant wheel of karma. So, through your communication with spirits and seeing what you've seen in other people, is there truth to this? Is there, to explain your vision of karma and how this is playing out as we unfold in these different incarnations?
I think karma in a negative sense has been bastardized over the years, like, you're
Right.
going to go to hell and burn for eternity kind of a thing. And I
Hmm.
think it's been used to control the masses, like, other things that are fear based have been. As I perceive karma, and what I'm told from spirit is
Hmm.
we expand out from each lifetime. So, for instance, back to the betrayal thing, let's say you want to explore betrayal and you live a lifetime where you're betrayed by a colleague or
Hmm.
a business partner. And then maybe you want to explore betrayal on the personal level with a friend or a lover or a spouse or something like that. So we expand out from all of those experiences and we look at different perspectives of the same basic script,
Right.
different lifetime, different gender, perhaps, certainly different socioeconomic status a lot of the time. And so, how I perceive it, Brian, is that we're climbing a set of stairs. The top step is when we're done exploring it. We're on to, okay, fine, I got that. Let's move on to something else that I want to
Right.
explore. But each step represents a different lifetime. And we go
Hmm.
through that and we learn it and we explore. Then we're ready to go to the next
Oh,
step.
okay.
And then
Yeah.
we're ready to go to the next step. And so I see it more like that. I don't see any negativity about it. Again, there's no negative in the spirit world.
Hmm.
There's no good, there's no bad. It's just an experience.
Okay.
So perhaps maybe the original idea of karma is I'm going to explore this, and then in a future life, I'm going to come explore it from a different perspective.
Right.
And it's not a punishment thing, but
Right.
it's let's look at it from a different perspective and see, instead of being the one that's being betrayed, maybe I come and I'm a betrayer
Right.
because I want to see what that feels like. Or maybe I'm the wife of, or the husband of, or the child of, or the friend of, or
Right.
the whatever. And keep in mind, there's no time in the spirit world. So these lifetimes may not even be a blip on the radar screen.
Right.
We're trying to make sense of something from our human capacity, our human brain capacity, to understand something that may not be understandable from our
Mhm.
human perspective.
Are there, have you sensed that there is just one timeline, or are there multiple different timelines that spirits are existing? Do you understand, like the theory with parallel realities? I always like to ask somebody that can see through the veil if that is a part of what we're going through. I mean, is there multiple versions of me that are living different lives, and then there's an aspect of me that's kind of like bringing it together? Does that,
Yes.
okay?
Yes. Yes. I here's a great example. I have a girlfriend that lives in Nashville, and when I stay at her home in her guest suite, they call it the Julie room because it was the room that I always stay in, and I'm up there quite a bit. I live in Birmingham, which is 3 hours south.
Right.
And so on their lot, they're in a neighborhood that used to be an old plantation, and they made a
Uh,
neighborhood out of it. And in their backyard at the far right corner is an old cemetery, and there's a foundation that when I scan it, I can see there was a chapel there. It was perhaps the chapel of the plantation. You know, a lot of those
right.
big estates have their own chapels. And typical Southern, you know, with the slaves are buried outside of the wall, and the family is buried on the inside.
Right.
There's all these tombstones and stuff. So, anyways, when I am in that room, I see this parade of people from the 1800s dressed in 1800 clothing walking through the room as if they're, I think, walking to Sunday church. They're dressed up in their Sunday finest.
Hmm.
So those are multiple realities
Right.
happening all at the same time. I
All
think
at the
that's
same
an
time.
example of it. And I think that's how we're able to access past life stuff. I tune into that person's spirit, and then we can access whatever life correlates with whatever the question is that they have. How
Hmm.
I do past lives, Brian, is I imagine myself in this endless hallway that's very narrow with very tall ceilings,
Okay.
and there are 12-inch by 12-inch mirrors that line the walls. Each mirror represents a different lifetime. And
Uh,
when I ask a question like, was Brian a neurosurgeon in a past life? You know, the mirrors that correlate with that question will come out from the wall as if they're on a hydraulic arm. And then I'll say, show me the one that correlates the most. And then I'll imagine walking into that mirror and I'm watching this mini movie.
right.
And we'll get dates and times and where it was and what your name
Wow.
was and who you were married to. And it's pretty wild.
So, by what you're saying, we're also interacting with future and the past, not just all a bunch of stuff in the past, but what's going on in the future as well.
Well, that's different
Okay.
because things that have happened in the past are set. Things that are happening right now are set. Things that are happening in the future are fluid. If
Okay.
you ask me what's going to happen with let's say you have a question about something in June, I can
Right.
give you an answer right now based on at this moment in time, here's what
Right.
I'm getting. But there are about a bazillion different variables that come into
Ah.
play that can affect an outcome. So when somebody says I am 100% accurate on predicting the future, yeah, no, you're not, because you can't, because they're everybody's free will. You know, the weather, the
Right.
pandemics, the whatever. We don't know how all those different variables are going to interplay with each other that are going to affect the future. Does
One
that
thing
make
that I
sense?
helped me to understand it, yeah, is when there's a quantum field of multiple possibilities, and a good psychic can tune into the likely field. There is
Right.
a kind of a likely probability, but still all those other ones still exist. So if you predict something, you were just kind of locking in on what the most likely, but if something else happens, it's still in that field of possibility, which is why no psychic can be 100%, but a good psychic is tuned into that field
Yeah.
of various possibilities, right?
Right. Well, it's like being at the horse races. It's
Right.
like being at Churchill Downs. Yeah. Well,
Right.
you're going to bet on Secretariat and you got a really good chance the Secretariat's going to win, but you don't know what's going to happen. Secretariat may twist his little hoof or
Right.
something during the race and it may affect the outcome. So you're absolutely right. There are so many different possibilities that I believe it's impossible for our human brains to calculate them.
Right. Okay.
Because you think about catching COVID and you're going to go to Ralph's and you're going to go to the grocery store
Hmm.
and you think, okay, I might catch COVID or I might not. Well, who's been there before you? What do they have? What has happened? There
Right.
are a bazillion different variables. Do you touch that thing? Do you wash your hands afterwards? Do you put your hands next to your face? I mean, it's just they're incalculable,
Right.
all
Have
those
you
different possibilities.
have you learned anything in this process of communicating with angels and spirit guides about prayer and how to pray?
Yes, great question. I see that there's a correlation between prayer being said and how many spirits and angels show up in the operating room I have a
Hmm.
friend whose husband had a heart cath done on Monday in New Orleans. And they texted me on Sunday night,
Hmm.
Dan's, arm is numb. Can you scan him? Can you see what's going on? Well, he was having a stroke. I saw a brain bleed in his head. I
Wow.
said, he's got a brain bleed. I said, call the emergency squad. His wife's in New Hampshire with her dying mother. He's home alone. I said, call the squad. And she said, well, he's going to take an Uber. I go, no, do not take an Uber because we don't know what hospitals are taking patients. We don't know where they're diverting. He
Hmm.
needs to be in the squad. Not to mention, if he's having a stroke, he needs care immediate anyways. So he gets in there. They do a heart cath on him anyways on
Hmm.
Monday. And she is really into angels and has a bunch of friends around the country that are really into angels. So she got on the prayer network. Let me tell you, Brian, there were so many darn angels in that in
Yeah.
that cath lab. Oh my God. There were so many spirits of deceased loved ones. And I'll always see a correlation when there's a lot of prayer being said for someone. I can always tell because there are tons of spirits, family, deceased family and friends. And this guy had a couple of dogs in the cath lab
Hmm.
spirit with him. I described them to him afterwards. He knew their names. He could tell me right away who
Oh,
they were.
wow.
He knew. But there were just angels everywhere, cherubs especially.
Hmm.
Cherubs just filling the space in the cath lab. And I'm watching them catheterize it, going up through his femoral artery in his groin, and I'm watching them
Right.
snake it through and everything, doing non-local reality and watching. And I didn't find anything. I didn't think they would, but he was having a stroke. And and that was interesting too because there's this procedure done in neurointerventional labs where if somebody's got a brain bleed, they'll go up through an artery and they'll release these little hair thin coils
Right.
and hundreds of them sometimes, and it makes the brain bleed coagulate. And I watched that healing happen energetically. By the time he got there and they did a CT scan, there was no trace of the
Oh,
brain bleed.
wow.
Yeah. So it's really phenomenal, the energetic healings that what an honor for me to get to
Yeah.
participate and witness. And I
Yeah.
believe it's spirit working through me and in conjunction with me. Certainly it's not me doing it. I'm the facilitator. I'm a part of the equation, but it's spirit working through me.
Well, the most important thing after reading the book and this interview is not to be afraid of death.
Right.
And it is easier said than done because that's human nature for us to fear these things
Right.
and to fear the outside world. But there are angels everywhere, and that's an amazing and wonderful thought. And it's great to it was an honor to meet you and get to talk about this stuff. And so Ask Julie Ryan is your blog, and then Angelica,
AskJulieRyan.com. Yeah.
AskJulieRyan.com,
Mhm.
and Angelic Attendants. And so thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us before we go?
Just this new book for kids, Angel Messages
Yes,
for
Angel
Kids, which
Messages
is
for
just
Kids.
darling. The illustrations are wonderful, and it'd take you like 2 minutes to read it to your kids. But my spirit guide, Pope Clement, told me I had to have this out by Christmas. And Yeah, so I paid the
Right.
illustrator double. I mean, I started working on it last fall, and we got it out the 20th of December. And
Well,
then I was
awesome.
talking to someone in Australia actually who said, "Well, now you know why Clement wanted it out by Christmas." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Because that's when the pandemic was starting." She said, "This gives so much comfort to children
The children.
who hear about people dying. They know they're out of school. They know their parents are stressed in some instances. And it gives so much comfort, not only to the parents, but the kids with angel messages for kids."
I love it.
So, yeah.
Thank you. I will definitely be buying one for my kids. So I appreciate it. And thank you so much for coming on. And welcome to the Reality Revolution.
Thank you so much. What a privilege.